Okay, so in one of the combat tutorial, I can't remember if it was a hand-to-hand combat tutorial or a sword combat tutorial or I don't know, maybe a gun one. I don't remember. I'm just probably going to do all three just because of it. But I mean, a hand-to-hand one, it's quick. It's probably its quality is lower in my opinion. But hey, let's play it 2 times, then I'll break it down. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So every time I start an animation, doesn't matter what kind of animation it is, just so everyone can figure out what's going on. I don't blast off with just a bunch of moves. I let I put down as many frames as it takes to make a second. So if the thing runs at 17 frames per second, I'm gonna put 17 to 18 frames before I even do anything. So I do that for every animation. Then I start moving. You know. So for the first attacks, which is honestly the hardest part to me, I start with small movement and I make one of them, doesn't matter which one, do an action of some sort, something that's quicker than the other, which is like a punch or kick or something. But in this case, it's a punch. And in this case, this guy's reacting with a block, which is the first move. And I don't immediately make a counter happen because it will look janky, it will look bad. It will look basically it will be too fast for a human mind to properly process. Like literally these frames are running at 17 frames per second. So it takes, 17 frames to make a single second. So if you only play one frame, and then have a bunch of other frames playing at the same time, you'll see 1/17th of a second, which isn't a lot of time for the mind to process imagery, you know? So before I make this guy do a reaction after blocking, I make 3 frames of load up and then an attack. So he blocks, 1, 2, 3. Then he attacks. That's the counter. Now for every punch, whenever it hits something, I make it go forward just a little bit and then I make it retreat. The reason I do that is because, well, when I punch someone, I don't immediately bounce back from punching them. And when I punch something, it depends on what I punch it. If I punch a pillow, I'm going to keep going forward and then I have to retract my arm myself. If I punch the ground, then, well, my arm's just going to bounce back because the ground is harder than me. It's more dense than my skin and my bone. And that's what I do with all of the punches, if not most of them, And of course, you make this guy react to getting punched, of course. That's just how it goes. He gets punched, he goes backwards, and then I prepare another strike like before. I ready another strike. Boom. Then he does another punch. And then it goes forward just a bit, and then it retracts. And then I make the other guy do a counter. Now, maybe someone's like, well, how do you decide if the person's going to do a counter or not? Well, in this case, I made his stance like this for a reason because this is I think it's called a turtle stance. I can't remember anymore because I don't remember the terminology for boxing. I just did it and was like whatever. But this is what I would do. I'd block with either one of my arms or both of my arms and or weave, and then I would go for a counter of some sort. In this case, it would be a punch. In this case, he's not leaning forward, he's not leaning all the way back, he's kind of just centered. And that's what the counter would be. So basically, you make any form of movement and then you just make a random explosion of movement, corresponding to that. And then, he follows up with his punch, it misses, this guy dodges. But since there's nothing hitting anything, it's still going to go forward, but just a little bit longer, and then it goes back. And then in this case, yes, this guy is also countering. This is a counter as well, but it's a counter with a dodge. Now, there are two types of counters from what I can tell so far. We have counters that revolve around getting hit, so it's a reactive counter, and then we have a counter that revolves around dodging. You know, so it's a little different because with getting hit, you get hit. If you block it properly, you can immediately counter. However, if you dodge, you not only do you have to make sure your footing's correct again, you have to get ready for another punch. So that's exactly what I do here. So he dodges. It takes about 5 frames for him to throw another punch, and that's his counter. It hits. Dude reacts. you know. Then I make him do a knee because that is what most likely this stance would allow. It would either allow another punch or another knee or a knee of some sort or a kick. And I put it that way because, well, I honestly don't think about what I'm going to do very like next all the time for an animation, especially for stuff like this. This is a tutorial animation. I made it like 30 minutes ago, so I didn't think about it. I just did it, did what felt right. And sometimes that's what it is. You don't plan it out. It kind of just happens, and you can kind of just tell where things are going to happen, you know? So he throws a knee. From here, he could throw a kick, another kick of some sort, or I can make the other guy counter. I do a lot of countering in this one. Just let's face it, no one's just going to repeatedly get punched, especially not in an animation. That's dumb, you know? And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this guy blow him backwards, so I can tell what to do next and end the animation. Now, animation's ending is rushed because, well, it's a tutorial animation. I'm breaking it down. But for this one, since it's near the end, I make him go all the way back. So that way you understand what's going on for just a split second. And then I'll say he's just going Super Saiyan or whatever. I don't know. Something. He's fast now. He's fast. He's a zoomy boy. So, he literally just dashes across the stage, hits the guy, takes almost 1 to 0 to no frames. It takes little frames for this certain action in which it changes all the rules I just said. And now the guy's able to just do whatever. Imagine like a turbo mode from Smash Bros. There's no landing lag. There's no move lag. There's no frame lag whatsoever. There's just moves. So now you can kind of just make him go quick, and attack no matter how you want. Like this doesn't even look right. These 3 frames are supposed to be separate actions. This frame is supposed to be attack, in which, if you were listening, and I imagine most people are, would need a frame right after it to show, like, it needs to go forward just a little bit more to show a recoil from hitting something. In this case, it goes immediately into a totally different action, which is a grab. And then it does the grab and throws him. And then I just stuff the stick figure down here. I leave like his body up here somewhere, and I take down his head and I just throw him right there. This is a movie clip. It's a spin. I call it a super spin. And basically it's for well, if a character is getting hit against something and I want to simulate spinning, this is what I would do. So it's kind of like a small tornado. And it gets hit against the ground and then boom, kind of launches. So we'll play it one more time. Like that entire sequence where he just goes from a punch to a grab is so short. I had to watch it 3 times just to figure out what I was if it was right or not. So yeah, that's how I would do combat. Basically, a lot of countering, a lot of quick movement, and a lot of punches. This one's just hand to hand, not feet. Not a lot of feet action going here. Not a lot of grabbing. Not a lot of joint breaking or something like that. No superpowers of any kind. Although yet again, I guess moving really fast it could be considered a superpower, but you get the point. Basically, in retrospect, or to break it down and make it simple, you make an action happen. You make sure there's 1 to 2 frames of lag data to show, so that way you understand what the action is, or the person who's going to be watching your animation. And while those 2 frames are adding up, you want to initiate another action. So it's kind of like throwing a punch and then having one of your arms already set backwards, so that way you can throw another punch immediately. It's the same way. And if you're going to be making the characters move quickly, obviously you would add less frames. If you want them to move more slowly, you add more frames. Making it more quick will make the animation a little more clanky. Adding more frames will make it slower but more smooth. That's why adding more frames makes everything look smooth, but you gotta compensate. So yeah, that's how I do combat. Okay, let's end it now.